What if I told you 5 years ago that there would be a boxing event wherein the main fight was between two unranked boxers and the fight before that would be for a championship title? You would probably think I'm pretty crazy. Well, that is exactly what's happening right now between Jake Paul and Tommy Fury. Two guys who aren't even ranked by the WBC, and yet they will be the ones getting the spotlight over Ilunga Makabu and Badu Jack. I think for many of us, including myself, didn't really think much about this whole influencer boxing scene when it was first starting out between KSI and Joe Weller. But as more and more influencers started to get involved in this, influencer boxing grew even bigger, and I started to realize just how much more attention these guys were getting as compared to actual boxers. I hate to admit it, but influencer boxing has reached a point wherein it has become more entertaining than real boxing. Well, at least to the casual fan. And that is because, aside from these guys already having a fan base, fights here are actually 50-50 and can go either way. This makes it so much more exciting to tune into. Super fights in boxing are such a rare occurrence nowadays, and what's commonly practiced in the sport are tune-up fights, wherein everyone already pretty much knows who will come out victorious. The fact that guys like Gervonta Davis, Shakur Stevenson, Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, Terence Crawford, Errol Spence Jr., or even Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev are all in the same division, but still haven't fought yet, really tell you about the problems when it comes to matchmaking in the sport. Promoters of the sport really hold boxing hostage and stop us from seeing these 50-50 fights everybody wants to see. Influencer boxing, on the other hand, satisfies those things that fans are craving for. While of course not being on the same skill level as real boxers, they still bring in enough excitement in the ring, and honestly, sometimes their lack of skill can make things even more fun to watch because they will just slug things out, something the average viewer loves to see. Oftentimes, it's not even about how skillful each competitor is at boxing, it's the story behind the actual fight that people really get invested in. I mean, if you look at the most popular video of the zone, the highest viewed video is the fight between KSI and Logan Paul. Now, of course, these guys will always get a lot of views because they already have a massive fan base even outside of boxing. But even when compared to the UFC, boxing falls far behind when it comes to matchmaking and getting fans excited for upcoming fights. Yes, big fights still happen, but they are too few and far in between as compared to the UFC and even influencer boxing. A big problem is how boxing is set up. You see, unlike the UFC, wherein pretty much all the best MMA fighters fight in that organization, in boxing, all the best boxers are from different organizations with different contracts, which makes it so much harder to make fights happen. For example, making the fight between Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. happen is like the equivalent of making a UFC champion fight a 1FC champion. I don't think influencer boxers are regulated to such strict contracts, so you can pretty much find them fighting whoever they want. Now we have Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury, and this just further proves my point that the story behind the fight is what makes people excited, and this is where influencer boxing shines at best. I'm still a much bigger fan of actual boxing, but the influencer boxing scene really caters to a much more mainstream market, and the business model right now for boxing really needs to change if we want to see our favorite fights happening. What do you guys think?